itself because there's no member. I would assume they'd probably get rid of this sometime.
Well, and speaking of LLCs and blockchain, and what would be like minimum, maybe requirements and constraints that you'd want to build in at design phase. Ori's been working diligently on this, and you're as far along as anyone I've met before.
Yeah, I can answer quickly from the technical perspective. I think the minimum viable DAO is just a multi-sig, and so we already see thousands of these. And if you have a 3 of 5 multi-sig, it's a DAO. It's an on-chain decision process for budgeting funds and making decisions. So executing any arbitrary transaction on the Ethereum blockchain, for example. Even on Bitcoin, you can do it supports multi-sig, so you can have a DAO on Bitcoin. And so you already see these like more complex protocols being built on Bitcoin just on the basis of convoluted ways of ordering multi-sig transactions. And then that kind of transitions into the project I'm working on, which right now we are just a multi-sig, and so we are operating as a DAO, but we realized really quickly that there's legal liability issues.
Types of LLCs you could select based on this recently enacted statute is the blockchain-based LLC. And among other, so there's one part of the workflow that I just want to highlight, which is these steps with the Secretary of State. You pay your fee to create and form the LLC, and you have some minimum terms in there. And we're just kind of going through the statute, like over the last couple of days, to see what those are. But there's the blockchain address where you could find the smart contract with the operating rules that are incorporated by reference.
The way that you change what contract you're pointing to. So maybe the contract itself could have mechanisms for swapping out which contract is the governance, or you could define in a legal process how you would switch from this multi-sig to a DAO stack DAO to an Aragon DAO.
Yeah, so I just want to highlight that. Follow-up.
Yeah, so I'm curious, is the government doing anything to interface better with the technical aspects of what you're building? Like, messaging in different kinds of ways instead of like attaching documents to emails? Are they doing anything that's progressive on that front?
Yeah, not that I know of. The most useful thing they could do would be to have an Ethereum address for paying taxes, because then we can build a module to automate our taxation, so we can be tracking kind of our income and using the tax rates to automate the paying of taxes. Right now, you would need that administrative participant to then have the DAO vote to give the administrative participant the amount of taxes that the entity is due. And that's like a point of potential contention, that the DAO could decide not to pay its taxes, I guess. And so one thing you could do to prevent this, you talk about kind of designing systems so that they don't run into these problems, is that you could create like a module on the DAO or an additional function or contract that is setting aside these taxes that then go to the administrative participant that they can then pay the state with.
Good stuff. Silk.
Yeah, I want to say something else to the minimum viable DAO. What you would also want to do is